Pied Piper by Black Hole CA. Read by Peony Podfix. Chapter 6. Retrograde. The name Piper had been floating around the underground for a while now, and he can only assume that the recently acquired pied portion had originated from the video of him that had been circulating. He'd lost a red contact during his fight against Death Arms, and his Christmas-colored eyes had been visible on camera when he turned to run from his impending doom, right towards the bystander that had been filming him. Midoriya passes Deo the phone, watching as he starts the video over. I mean, I get the name, the vigilante says, stepping back to sit on the teen's bed. Pied, multicolored, I get it, but why? I didn't think the internet was coherent enough to come up with something like that. Ch.6 sets the phone aside halfway through. He'd already watched it several times before the vigilante had arrived. He gives the younger boy a sly grin. I may have mentioned on more than a few online forums that your name already kind of resembled a certain comic book character. People seem to agree. Midoriya freezes, mouth falling open just the tiniest bit. You? It has a rather unexpected effect as well, since the name kind of draws everyone to make their own conclusions about what your quirk is. There's not much footage of you, and most online testimonials can't be proven, so there's not really any information to dispute them, Neil says, before shrugging. I saw a post yesterday that was starting to go around, claiming that you can control rats. It's a rather entertaining side effect, if I'm being honest. Ch.6's lips quirk up in a smile. It's nearly 3 a.m., and the vigilante is borderline exhausted. But when he thinks about the true origin of his name and the pipe he left sitting on the fire escape outside, he can't help but break into laughter, muffling the sound with his elbow. It's been 2 weeks, Ch.6. Midoriya laughs. What have you begun? Neo huffs a laugh of his own, eyes crinkling at the corners. You'd be surprised at my online influence. The 15-year-old falls back into the bed, staring at the ceiling as they fall into a comfortable silence. And Ch.6 goes back to working on a voice modulator he had started on for class. It's a peaceful moment, the two sharing the same space, the same air, with no need for forced communication or small talk. The clinking of metal fills the silence, and the thoughts in Neo's head swirl. Piper had come back limping into his room less than 30 minutes ago. No serious injuries this time, but he'd had a few bruises to add to his collection. The 17-year-old tries to shut down the train of thought he'd been dragged into, tries to pull the emergency brake, but the thoughts surge forward like a flood, filling him with questions. He reaches a hand up, grasping for the surface, but he only takes hold of more water. More questions. Here, beneath the floodwaters, his lungs burn, begging for air, for answers. Piper. Ch.6 sets down the piece he's working on, slowly turning around. His voice takes on a tone that's almost strangled, as if he's trying to hold himself back in a way that Midoriya had never been privy to. Why did you decide to become a vigilante? Midoriya freezes, caught off guard. Neo doesn't say anything more. He doesn't push for answers or demand anything from the boy. Izuku should have expected it, really. Then again, maybe he had, and he'd simply been denying the inevitable. The 17-year-old had stitched up the Vigilante numerous times by now. He deserved to know why Piper existed. Deserved to know why he went out piling up wounds like he did. Ch.6 deserved to know the meaning behind the injuries he treated. Midoriya slowly sits up, head bowing over his knees, studying the lines of his hands. It's the only way I can save people, Izuku answers quietly, before realizing his mistake, quickly backtracking. I mean, obviously there are other professions that allow you to save people, but to be able to save people. His voice gets quiet again. This is the only way. In his mind, the caustic voice returns, dropping absent words that a 15-year-old desperately tries to drown out. Ch.6 doesn't say anything, letting the boy collect himself. I tried the legal way, he says, swallowing around the lump in his throat. Tried applying for the hero course, but He trails off, bile rising. I'm quirkless. His eyes burn, and it takes all the 15-year-old has not to let tears start slipping down his face. He waits for the backlash. For the, "Are you insane?" For the, "If I'd have known that, I wouldn't have." For the dangers of hero work are simply too high, but none of them come. Nothing comes. Midoriya looks up, searching for a response from the older teen. Searching for the look of disgust or disappointment. But there's nothing. No hate, no pity, no alarm. The boy's amber eyes are calm, boring into the Vigilante's own cocktail of red and green, soothing him. I really should have seen that coming. The words are so easily said without malice or revulsion or distaste that it surprises the 15-year-old. It's said in such a matter-of-fact way, and it's something that's so very Neo-like of the teen to respond with that Midoriya can't help the laughter that bubbles up. That's it? That's it. There's a soft smile that comes with the words. It's kind of badass, to be honest. If the older boy notices when Midoriya swipes at the few tears that slip out, he doesn't say anything. Izuku mumbles a thank you, and the two spend the next half an hour watching hero videos at Neo's suggestion. The next night, before Midoriya has even had time to catch any criminals, the Vigilante finds himself staring down over a small squadron of flashing police cruisers. His heart pounds in his chest, and the light from that mini sun burns bright between his ribs, making him giddy through the terror that's threatening to overrun him. There's an unconscious C-rank hero 3 stories below him, being tended to in the ambulance that arrived. And he knows it's a serious situation that he's in, The building that he's on is surrounded by police, and he knocked a hero unconscious. But he can't help how his hand rises in greeting. Beneath the vigilante, Tamakawa and Tsukauchi watch from the street. He certainly acts like a kid, Sansa says, looking up as Piper waves at the 3 police cars below. Nomasa pinches the bridge of his nose in an attempt to ward off his oncoming headache. Yes, he does. It's not a great circumstance. I'm sure he'll end up getting away since we don't have enough people here. But at the very least, I'm not as worried about some revenge seeker catching him before us. He's good for his age. Sansa's brow rises. So, you think Piper's a kid after all? Tsukauchi shrugs. I'd say a teenager at the very least. Maybe 16, 17? At that age, it's possible they could be feeling pressure to do something with their life. I know teachers can stress students for their career paths, especially with only a few months till the end of semester. The timing lines up for it at least. He'll have to have learned to fight somewhere, the feline says, replaying the events in his head. Maybe a hero school? Sansa asks. Nomasa shakes his head, squinting through the flashing police lights to see Piper's dark silhouette. I doubt he'll be doing this if he was good enough to get into a hero school. Seeing him fight up close, it looked more like some kind of martial art. Have someone start looking into some of the local dojos. It might help us catch a lead. Have them make visits if necessary. I'll help out with it when I can. Yes, sir. Piper gives one final wave to the officers below, before disappearing. Follow him, Nomasa shouts, watching him disappear. Have a few cars patrol the area, and notify the local hero agencies to be on the lookout for Piper. Tsukauchi sighs, watching the remaining officers scramble to follow his orders, as his mouth stretches into a yawn. Sansa side-eyes the man. Will you be able to make it back to your place? No need to, the detective replies, watching one of the patrol cars pull away. I'm staying at Misaki's tonight. She's out on a business trip and doesn't want to leave my nephew home alone. She said he'll stay up till 5 if I don't stop him. Sansa's whiskers twitch in amusement. Sounds like someone else I know. Tsukauchi sends him a playful glare. Have fun, detective, Sansa says, bemused. A smirk pulls at Nomasa's lips, and he hums in response. You too, Sansa. And sorry for keeping you out so late. The feline waves him off. Not your fault. Midoriya scales the fire escape, rushing up the stairs as quietly as he can. It's now 1 a.m., and he knows he should feel tired, but adrenaline is still rushing through him like lightning, and he feels too giddy to sleep. He can see Deo's bedroom light still on, and he breaks into a grin, picking up his pace. Midoriya rips his face mask and shoes off, and sets his staff and sneakers down on the landing before going to tap on the boy's window. Deo's sitting at one of his workshop tables, studying a blueprint, when he looks over, surprised. He's up and opening the window within seconds, letting the boy in. Piper? You're here kind of early. Midoriya crawls through the opening, pulling his hood back as he goes. Sakauchi, you'll never believe what just happened. I'm shaking. Midoriya straightens himself and whips up his hands to show the boy the gentle tremble of his fingers. The cops had me cornered. I was in this parking lot behind Denny's, and I wasn't even doing anything, but they recognized me. And then there were all these cops that showed up, and they called in this hero that had this quirk, and I can't remember his name, but I know him. He knows martial arts, and he dual-wielded batons, and... Nail claps his hands down on the younger boy's shoulders with a laugh. Slow down there, Speedstar. I lost you at the cops cornered me. Izuku takes in a deep breath, trying to steady his heart rate. I got away. There's a grin that blooms across his face. I got away. The boy is basically vibrating in place. How the hell did I get away? And you came all this way just to tell me this? I was close by, and knowing you, I figured you'd still be awake working on something. Midoriya makes his way towards the forgotten blueprints, still giddy but very obviously trying to calm himself down. What are you working on? Neo laughs, accepting the change in subject. After yesterday, I took the liberty to come up with a few ideas for some gear you could use. I figured they might help you at some point. Midoriya opens his mouth to respond, but is quickly stopped when Neo raises a hand. Before you say anything, I want to tell you this. In about 5 minutes, you'll probably come to the sudden realization that me doing this for you would make me your accomplice, which is, as you know, illegal. So, I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I understand what I'm getting myself into, and I want you to know that I believe you won't rat me out or anything if you get caught. As strange as it is, I trust you, Piper. The stars in Izuku's eyes flare to life, and while they radiate only a fraction of the light that burns in his chest, it's enough to convey to Deo what this means to him. Midoriya, the boy says, chest welling with an indescribable emotion. My name's Midoriya. Deo can only grin, as he pulls a few blueprints from a stack on his desk. All right then, Midoriya, what do you say about these? I was thinking you could use more than just a staff, and since you're obviously running from heroes and stuff a lot now, I figured some sort of smoke bombs would be a necessity. Namasa lets out a tired sigh as he steps out of the apartment's complex elevator, dragging a spare key from his pocket. All the lights are off when he unlocks the door, save the thin stream seeping out from his nephew's room. The man slips off his shoes and a coat, setting them on the entry bench. Neil, it may be the weekend, but 2 a.m. is pushing it. There's a loud clatter from the room, like something falling, and a muffled yelp that sounds distinctly unlike Leo. Nomasa frowns, walking towards the door. Just before he manages to get there, there's a thump, and Leo lifts open the door, socked feet scrambling for purchase on the wooden floors. Waji-san, you scared me. Mom didn't say you were coming. The boy's voice is a higher decimal than usual, and sweat beads at his brows. Nomasa stares the boy down. He's obviously disheveled, worried about the man finding something. Neil, Is there a girl over? The teen's eyes get comically wide. Absolutely not. Truth. Dale recognizes the approaching danger and starts speaking again before the man can ask another question. I was just talking to a friend about some new projects. Are they here? Neil's eyes zip to something in his room before bouncing back again. No? The word sounds more like a question than an answer. Truth. The man's brow rises, too tired to properly berate the boy. Did they just slip out the window? Neil's teeth dig into his lower lip. I'd prefer not to answer that. The detective huffs out a tired sigh before turning away. If they're not staying the night, make sure they get home safe, Dale. Takauchi deflates, letting out a relieved sigh. Yes, sir. Midoriya curses, scrambling down the fire escape, shoes in one hand and staff in the other. He pauses at the bottom, listening for a commotion above as he attempts to calm his erratic breathing. He doesn't hear anything at first, but eventually there's a call from above. Midoriya! You still there? Dale leans his head out the window, whisper shouting at the 15-year-old as he looks for movement below. Yes? The vigilante calls back up with the same sort of whispered shout. I've gotta go. Be safe, okay? Midoriya slips back up one of the flights of stairs. Safe is my middle name. No. No, absolutely not. Your middle name is Target Practice and you have an aim here sign adhered to your chest. Izuku lets out a quiet laugh as he sits down to finally pull on his shoes. You're going home, right? Not yet. It's Sunday, so I was thinking of staying out a bit longer. I didn't get much done earlier, and I've been trying to track down this one group of teens for like a week. I'm hoping I'll finally manage to catch a break since it's the weekend. The vigilante finishes knotting his laces, picking his staff back up as he stands. I'll see you later. I'm excited to see how far you get with those smoke grenades you mentioned. With that, he disappears back into the night from which he came. There's a 24-hour convenience store nearby that Midoriya visits on the occasions he starts craving something or the other mid-patrol. And he'd heard a few rumors from the cashier that he's acquainted with that there'd recently been an outbreak of shoplifting cases in the area. All of the rumors he'd been privy to thus far led him back to the one group that he was now tailing. He watches the 5 teens strive down a dead-end alley before following them, cutting off their only path out. I thought you said this was a shortcut, Heidi, the only other girl says. Her hair is a neon blue, possibly quirk-related, considering the dim glow it gives off. Sorry, must be the next one down. There's a strained laugh that follows the response. Midoriya pauses, surprised by the familiarity that comes with the voice. One of the guys, A boy with 2 small horns turns around first. Bright yellow eyes burning through the dark. The vigilante can't tell if either attribute or quirk related, but staring into his eyes causes the vigilante's stomach to twist uncomfortably. The teen startles upon seeing the darkly clad figure, his form appearing as a mere silhouette in the backlighting of the street lamp behind the 15-year-old. The others turn with him. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Midoriya brushes aside the words. I thought you were supposed to have learned by now not to take stuff that doesn't belong to you. The teens tense, immediately on the defensive. What was that, asshole? The blue-haired girl calls, scowl illuminated by the glow of her hair. He sees it sparkle with a minute amount of electricity and reminds himself to be wary. Now, there are 2 ways we can go about doing this. Piper feigns more confidence than he feels, banging one end of his staff on the concrete, the sound startling the teens as he leans casually against it. The way where I call the police and you wait patiently for them to sort everything out. Or, he says, drawing out the word, the way where I call the police and make you wait patiently for them to sort everything out. In the dim light of the alley, the vigilante has the advantage of having the light to his back. And it's because of this that when he looks over the shoulder of the yellow-eyed boy, he pauses at a startlingly familiar face. 2 startlingly familiar faces. 2 that he prays he isn't actually seeing. 2 that he prays are just a trick of the light or his mind or anything other than the cruel hand of fate. But fate had never been so kind as to make anything in his life so simple. The first face belongs to one Tanaka Hato. He hadn't seen the boy in literal years, not since Chi-sensei had kicked him from the dojo. But it'd be hard to forget his face and the wicked grin of promised violence hidden in his eyes once he'd seen the potential for a fight. There had been rumors, of course, of what had happened to him after he'd left. 2 kids from their class had said they'd spotted him viciously working the competition circuits under a different dojo. Another said he'd moved schools and become the head of some delinquent gang. And seeing him now, Izuku can see that both of the rumors might have had some truth buried there. Because of this, Midoriya wasn't too surprised at seeing him there. He was more surprised to see the girl standing just behind him. He hadn't seen her over a year, and her name hadn't come up in almost as long. But he wouldn't be able to forget the face of the girl he trained with and fought against for 5 years. Hirano Airi, now 16 years old, the winner of multiple Muay Thai awards and competitions, had fallen into delinquency. The vigilante knew that a lot could happen within a year. Just looking at himself was proof enough of that, but to see her now, so far removed from the girl he'd known at their dojo, startled him, to say the least. She seemed out of place within the group, and he realizes now that she was the owner of the voice he'd recognized earlier. What makes you think you can make us do anything? The yellow-eyed teen wraps an arm around the back of Tanaka's neck, drawing him closer with a grin. I'll have you know this guy right here is a master at karate. There's a scowl that comes upon Tanaka's face with the word karate, but is quickly replaced for a Cheshire grin, similar to the other boys. Don't forget about our girl Airi. the other girl says, stepping forward with Hirano in tow. I heard she can kick some ass too. The 16-year-old looks completely uncomfortable, shying away from the spotlight they'd shoved on her. I don't really fight anymore. Midoriya feels a surge of sympathy from the girl when the friend sends her a disgusted, "What the hell is wrong with you?" look. I'd hate to fight a bunch of kids anyway, he replies, heterochromatic gaze turning to scan the others. The last teen, a tall, lanky guy with black hair and no noticeable quirk, speaks up from the back. Says the shortest one here. He flashes a smug grin at the vigilante, and in the dim lighting, Midoriya can see the glint of shark-like teeth in his mouth. My quirk lets me smell emotions, he hisses. And you reek of fear and false confidence. Tell him, Shimada. Piper doesn't let the words faze him. Can't let them faze him. He knows he's scared, knows that his vigilante persona oozes confidence that he doesn't have during the day. So instead, he uses the words to his advantage. He's probably a type of empath then. Not offensive, but watch out for his teeth. The girl is some type of electrical quirk, so I'll need to be wary of getting too close. I shouldn't have to worry about Tanaka's quirk, more his physical abilities, and I doubt that Hirano will even try to fight unless I attack her first. His eyes dart back towards the front man, and when he catches the teen's gaze, he feels his stomach twist again, a sudden irrational fear coiling his stomach in knots. Emotional manipulation? Midoriya swallows around his gradually growing fear. Possibly an emotional amplifier. The boy rips his gaze away, zipping back to the other four. Eye contact activation. He doesn't get much more time to think before Tanaka is charging at him. Fighting the boy is just as the vigilante remembers. His kicks and punches are just as vicious as they had been 5 years ago, and the smile he wears is just as devilish in nature. But as their fight drags on, Tanaka's grin slowly dissolves into a grimace when he sees how the vigilante is able to keep up with him, blocking his attacks with ease. Hato, quit playing around. We've got places to be. Not playing, Osaka, Tanaka grunts, blocking the swing of the vigilante's pipe. It's only for a split second, but Tanaka's gaze leaves his opponent to glare at the yellow-eyed teen. Midoriya grins, watching the moment the boy drops his guard to look away. You shouldn't let something as simple as words distract you, Piper shouts, as he slams his staff into the older boy's side. There's a grunt of pain from his opponent. Tanaka is no amateur. Midoriya knows this, but he isn't expecting for the boy to clamp his arm around the end of the staff. The older boy looks up, grinning. I was hoping you'd fall for that. From the corner of the vigilante's vision, he sees Osaka, the yellow-eyed teen, rushing towards him. He tries yanking the pipe back towards him to block the incoming blow, but Tanaka is strong, and his grip doesn't waver, so the teen's fist slams into Midoriya's face. The blow sends stars across his vision, and he stumbles to the side, momentarily stunned. Tanaka tosses the pipe far from them, sending a loud clanging of metal on concrete. Piper rubs gently at his cheek, worried about how it will bruise. He slowly turns his head to look at the yellow-eyed teen. What the hell am I gonna do if this bruises? He can taste copper and swipes his tongue along his teeth to check them. Sounds like a you problem, the boy sneers. The vigilante scowls, falling back into a basic defensive stance, pied eyes zipping between the two, watching to see who would move next. He needs to finish this quickly. Osoke raises his fists, and the vigilante recognizes the stance of that of a boxer. But it's off in a way that tells Midoriya that it was learned through imitation, rather than instruction. The yellow-eyed teen makes to throw another punch. But it's sloppy, and Midoriya is able to easily catch it. He uses the boy's own momentum and sends him slamming into the wall. Tanaka attacks then, kick flying from his blind spot towards the vigilante's ribs. It sends spikes of pain through his side, and some of the breath from his lungs, but it's the opening the vigilante needed. He locks down his arm around Tanaka's ankle, grinning behind his mask with bloodied teeth. I was hoping you'd fall for that. Hato curses, trying to wrench his foot free. But before he can, Midoriya sends his own kick to the back of the teen's free leg, watching it buckle. He uses the opportunity it offers him to slam Tanaka, stomach first, into the concrete. He lets out a grunt of pain as Piper digs his knee into his lower spine and locks the older boy's arm behind his back. Stay down, the vigilante murmurs. Tanaka uses his free hand to take an awkward swing at the 15-year-old. Like hell, asshole! Midoriya takes a stronger hold of the boy's arm and wrenches up, Tanaka letting out a gut-wrenching cry as the vigilante drops his hold. Springing to his feet to round on the blue-haired girl he catches running in the corner of his vision. I said stay down! He shouts at the boy behind him, as she skids to a halt, the fight draining from her eyes as she takes a step back. Shit! Hato! Osuke calls, as he pushes himself up from where he'd fallen. You better get your ass up! Izuku can see the blood on him, trickling from the scrapes on his hands and knees, and from one just above his brow. But Tanaka only groans, rolling over, still holding his shoulder. It's only dislocated, the vigilante informs them, as he eyes the other four for movement. Take that as a warning. Osuke scoffs. You think I'd be scared just because you popped someone else's shoulder out of place? But Midoriya can see the fear in his yellow eyes, and when Izuku glances at the shark-toothed teen stationed behind him, the vigilante can tell that for all the confidence Osuke puts up, he's scared. Piper grins beneath his mask. It seems I'm not the only one who reeks of fear and false confidence. They meet eyes, and there's another swell of fear within the vigilante. But he swallows it, reminding himself that this isn't what real fear was. Midoriya had felt real fear, and this was not it. Osake scowls, and the Shimaru boy warily glances between the two of them. The teen's face flushes with anger, and he doesn't say anything before charging with another imitation boxer swing. But Piper doesn't block it this time, instead sending a kick to Osake's head. He crumples under the blow, unconscious, and it goes by quickly after that. The blue-haired girl tries charging at him again, but it only takes a simple arm lock for her to surrender, and Shimaru gives up without a struggle after the display, letting the vigilante calmly zip-tie his hands to a bike rack he'd cuffed the blue-haired girl to. Fear can be a good thing, Midoriya says as he stands up, wiping off his hands. It means you're cautious. It keeps you on your toes as long as you don't let it control you. He locks eyes with the shark-toothed boy. Never underestimate someone who's scared. The vigilante turns then, not waiting for a response, as he ducks back into the alley to help Tanaka stand. He scowls, but doesn't put up any fight when Midoriya pulls him up and walks him out of the alley to zip-tie his good arm to the bike rack next to Shimaru. Hirano is the last conscious one still free. He'd been saving that encounter for later, but now she was the last one standing. He couldn't put it off anymore. She'd been slowly making her way towards the front of the alley, since the vigilante had helped Tanaka up. He approaches her now and sees tears swell in her eyes. She's not making a move to try and escape, and Midoriya feels a surge of pity well up within him at the fact. The last thing he wants to do is zip-tie the girl to a street sign until the police arrive, but he can't afford to hint his connection with her. So he quietly guides the sniveling 16-year-old towards a spot on the sidewalk and binds her hands to a street sign in the most comfortable position he can think of. She's far enough from everyone else that no one would be able to tell if he spoke. So when he gently works the zip ties around her wrist, he speaks to her in a quiet voice. He tries to hold back at first, but seeing the unshed tears glinting on her eyes does nothing but further stoke his curiosity. Why are you with them? She looks up at him, startled. What? Why are you with them? He says, repeating himself. You don't seem the type to hang around with delinquents. She swallows around a lump in her throat. I trained with one of them for a while at a dojo we used to go to. We just happened to end up at the same high school, and I didn't know anyone else. She looks down, studying the cracks in the sidewalk. The vigilante sighs. If you want my advice, then I'd suggest finding new friends. It's not always an easy task, but it's better than finding yourself in another situation like this, right? A part of his heart aches to see Hirano like this. She'd always thrived underneath the dojo's roof, but here she looked part cadaver, completely drained of the shine she once held. If they try to give you trouble for leaving, then turn to someone who will get you help to get out. And if there's no one to help you get out, then you know how to fight back if they try anything, right? She nods, a few tears falling onto the pavement. You'll be fine. When the police get here, just tell them the truth. They'll believe you, I promise. He finishes with the zip ties and pushes himself back up, distancing himself from her. Damn it! Let us go, asshole! The blue-haired girl shouts from where he tied her. I'm afraid the name's Piper, not asshole. Midoriya lets out a tired sigh. I don't care who the hell you are! We weren't doing anything wrong. The vigilante swipes at the sweat on his forehead, turning towards the teen. Attempted assault, illegal quirk usage, and... Oh, he exclaims, turning towards the girl. I've been hearing rumors about a group of kids running around the area, shoplifting from a bunch of stores. They've all been noticing a suspicious occurrence within their surveillance equipment just before things disappear without a trace. The work of a quirk, I'd assume. And what does that have to do with us? Tanaka calls from beside the girl. Obviously, because it was you guys who set up this whole traveling magic show. The vigilante sneers. There's a bitter taste on the back of his throat when he sees Hirano's downtrodden face from the corner of his eyes. I assume it's the work of the electric quirk among you, he says, eyeing the girl's sparkling blue hair. I'll let the police figure out the details for themselves. Whoever it is will probably end up taking a majority of the fall. Unlicensed quirk usage and all that. A bona fide villain for sure. So the rest of you shouldn't worry too much. The boy walks back into the alley, slipping a phone off to Osaka and pulling up the emergency tab on the locked screen and dialing 110. He can see the blue-haired girl start fidgeting as he presses the phone to his ear. He smiles at the nervous look she's donned since his little villain spiel. Hi there, Piper here. I've got a group of 5 teens sitting outside the Odonera bathhouse, Igusa District, Block 26, Building 16. There's been a string of shoplifting cases in the area involving the use of an electrical quirk. I believe they're in possession of several stolen items at the moment, so I think you'll find they're the ones behind it. Midoriya glances back at the kids. You'll need at least 3 patrol cars. Maybe one of those police vans I see from time to time. Your precinct is a van, right? Either way, they'll be here waiting. 1 is unconscious and 4 are tied up. Also, 1 has a dislocated shoulder, so I'd dispatch an ambulance or 2 as well. Thanks! The vigilante picks up his staff and retreats to a nearby rooftop, watching the 5 to make sure there are no successful escape attempts before the police arrive. In the distance, he can see police lights flashing and sirens wailing.